When Destiny first came onto the scene in 2014, that was my first real taste of a proper looter shooter. Well, I mean, really, it was Destiny 2 I played the most, but I did play Destiny 1, just not really much at all. Anyways, so when I heard there was a looter shooter coming out with Unreal Engine 5 and made by Nexon, which is like a big publisher and developer in South Korea, more about them later. But yeah, I was really excited. There's going to be a new AAA looter shooter with seemingly plenty of resources, and since there's been many more upgrades to physical hardware since 2014, I was really excited about what the First Descendant could be. Having dropped with 264,000 concurrent players on just Steam alone, the game seemed promising at the start, but those player numbers quickly started declining, falling 96% within a pretty short period of time, and still slowly bleeding players on top of that. And so I just want to give my 2 cents on what I think happened here, and later on some things I think could help bring people back. So stick around and we'll go over all of that. And it's worth mentioning that I have over 300 hours put into this game, so I do feel like I have a pretty good understanding of these things. So first, I want to talk about some positive things I think the game does right. One of the first major things I think the First Descendant does right is the pool of characters and abilities. There's definitely plenty to choose from, and they all have various play styles, and all the abilities are fun to use and aren't too complicated, making it pretty user-friendly. They're also adding new characters and weapons regularly with season changes. And since it's a looter shooter, I always ended up drifting towards Bunny in the end game farm cycle, because you can just clear whole areas so quickly with a properly built out farming class with her high voltage transcendent mod, which is a legendary module that changes her area of effectability from a circular pulse of electricity into a focused beam that does way more damage but to less enemies at a time. I love that, and I think it's so cool that they have modules that can actually change what their abilities do. And speaking of the modules and all the upgrades you can make to each descendant in your weapons, that's definitely another positive in my opinion. While it can be a little confusing at first, I really like the module system and how the sky is the limit to how you can build out your descendant or your weapon. There's a massive range of modules, and putting them all together can result in so many different builds and styles of playing the game, and you can also level up your modules on top of it, already being built out how you like it. And so there's just so much potential to play exactly how you want to, which I think is really great. Another positive, I think, and this might catch some wreck in the comments, but I'm a big fan of the skins for the characters. Like, why have an ugly looking character in your game when you could have a Haley Scott or a Viessa and more? Where this could become a problem, though, is when too much effort is focused on having thirsty skins instead of putting these resources into actual gameplay, the story, or the maps. And there's definitely some other positives in there, like server stability, which is good for the most part. Using your character's abilities is awesome and feels really fun, just like when you're playing in general. Like the times where there's just a ton of bad guys and you can suck them all together with a traction grenade and then frag them all to death. Incredible. Chef's kiss. The devs also seem pretty in touch with the community, and the other players are always friendly and down to help farm or beat bosses, plus some other things that are just kind of too small to mention. So there are definitely some great things about the game, but let's talk about why I think nobody stuck with it. The first major thing, in my opinion, and take it with a grain of salt because I'm just a dude with a camera and a small YouTube channel, and this might come off as hate, but it's really just like a critique of mine. Like, I actually enjoy playing the game, but I think the actual gameplay loop, the whole story of the main missions, and just like being around in the maps, all feel just kind of like a little like soulless, maybe a little empty. You'd have to play it to know what I'm talking about. But besides Albion, which is like the main hub for players, the game does just really kind of feel a little empty when you're out actually playing. I don't really know exactly what it is because the looter shooter genre is all pretty much the same concept in the core gameplay structure, but other games like Destiny and The Division just don't have that feeling when I play them, that like emptiness. I don't know. They have more personality and it just feels a lot like more effort was put into the story and gameplay. I could probably make a whole video on all these talking points, but for the sake of time in this one, I'll just leave it at that for the first and most important negative thing I think is why people aren't coming back or, you know, stuck around with it in general. Another big thing I think people didn't like is their drop rates for things that they're farming for. I feel like I played the same mission over 100 times or more, and that's really not even an exaggeration. It was literally, it took so long. And that was just to get the ultimate bunny code, which is 1 out of 4 of the main things you need to farm for her. Which, if that was my only option, then that's fine, I guess. But you can just buy her with real money and circumvent the whole farming process. Like, sometimes I'd literally consider just buying her after so many tries to get her code and feeling just really defeated. And I think that's exactly what the devs kind of intended. I never bought any Descendants, for the record. I earned them all fair and square. But anyways, having the ability to just buy your way to a cool endgame is wrong in my opinion. And I think that doesn't foster a player base that actually values the time it takes to get that stuff by farming. When you can just buy your way to getting all the best Descendants, you miss out on the moments where your hard work pays off after you finally get that thing you've been farming for forever. And this is where another major problem lies. Nexon had a big scandal back in the day and got sued and lost with their game MapleStory. And they were changing the probabilities of the loot boxes to sometimes near zero, according to this article, without disclosing them, lowering the odds to the players spending money on these boxes. And there's a lot of similarities there with the community that plays the First Descendant and them saying the same thing. There's no proof that they're doing it again, and probably aren't. I mean, who knows? But they've definitely been accused of doing it in this game, and it kind of feels like it, honestly. So I think that's a pretty big negative thing, like feeling like your time that you put into the game isn't really paying off sometimes. And another pretty major thing here, and this sort of ties into the first reason, but there's just really not much new here or innovative. Like, why switch to the First Descendant and have to put all that time into it if there's not much more compelling about the game? Except for the skins, of course. I mean, you know. But if you're relying on just your skins to be the attractor to your game, then you've already failed. Also, another thing I think is a big difference with this game and a possible reason more people didn't stick around is the lack of a PvP mode. I personally would love to see a PvP mode in the First Descendant. I don't know how they would pull it off or what it would look like. But it would give people a big reason to have the Descendants all kitted out and be, you know, proud about all the time they put into it or whatever. And then to maybe go into an arena with other real players. I think that could be a really cool thing if they pulled it off properly. I think those are some of the big reasons why people didn't stay with it. I mean, I'm curious why you guys tried the First Descendant and didn't stick with it. So let me know in the comments. So to kind of recap, there's the game feeling pretty empty and having a lackluster gameplay loop. There's the farming feeling a little bit like you're unlucky too often. Not too much new that would compel you to come from your looter shooter of choice. And the lack of a player versus player mode. Those, I feel like, are pretty solid reasons people aren't switching or coming back to it. And I'm not saying the First Descendant is a bad game. I actually like it a lot and love playing to farm things with like a podcast or music playing in the background and not sweating and just kind of vibing. I love it for that. I'm just saying what I think is the reason more people didn't stick with it. I honestly think if they redesigned the maps to have a little more personality and added more depth to the story as a start, that would be a really beneficial thing for the game. And I know they've said that they don't want to do a PvP, but I really do think if they added that, it would be major. Maybe it could be like an arena style where you're actually shooting and, you know, killing the other players and like team deathmatch type things, or maybe it could be like a time trials for dungeons or boss battles against other teams, and whoever comes out on top wins. Like, there's so many things that they could do there, and give people a reason to play, and maybe even like a ranked system. I know that might be getting a little overboard, but you know, a lot of people like ranked and having like a progression system that other players can see and see the leaderboards of and all that stuff. Like I said, I would love to know your guys' thoughts on all this. I just really hate seeing games' popularity dwindle. I've kind of said that with other games and all that, but if one thing I can hope for with my videos is that, you know, sometimes I bring maybe some attention to some of these games and more people want to go back to it and check it out. And that would feel like, for me, as a small creator on YouTube, like I kind of did something, you know? That's kind of like what I hope for when I make a lot of videos about games that are kind of like not as big and not in the mainstream. I kind of hope that, you know, I can put some more eyeballs onto it and say that, hey, you know, there's definitely still good games out there. And, you know, I can feel good about myself. If somebody watches one of my videos and decides to go back and check out the First Descendant, or, you know, check it out for the first time in general, that would just be a really great feeling. That would be one of the main things I would like to see happen with my channel is, you know, raising awareness for games that aren't as popular or are kind of dying maybe. Like, that would be a really awesome thing for me to see. And I love when I get comments about people saying that they checked out a game because they saw my video. Like, that really feels like, you know, something that is good, like really good, you know? So yeah, I really appreciate everybody sticking around to the end. I really appreciate everybody clicking on the video, subscribing to the channel, leaving comments, you know, all that good stuff. Yeah, I really hope that you guys got something out of the video, maybe some education, some entertainment, some information you didn't know. And yeah, I really appreciate you guys sticking around to the end. And thank you guys for tuning in. You know what to do if you like the channel. You know what to do if you like this video. With all that aside, I hope you guys have a good rest of your day.